Festival of Imbolc is around the corner, and if you're interested in the Pagan Wheel of the Year and the 8 Sabbats, you are probably already familiar with the Season of the Witch Oracle deck. However, if you're not because you're new to tarot and oracle card reading, or perhaps you've been reading for some time but you're not sure whether these decks are for you, today I'd like to do a walkthrough of my favourite Season of the Witch deck, the Imbolc Oracle. Now, before we get started, if you're already using the Season of the Witch deck oracles, do comment below and let us know which is your favourite deck out of the collection. So not only is this my favourite Season of the Witch deck, it also made it to my top oracle and tarot decks of last year list, and you can watch the video up here. And after the flip through, I will explain why I love this deck so much. So let's have a look at the cards. This is what the creators have to say about these cards. The wheel now turns to Imbolc, the midway point between the start of winter and the start of spring. In each deck of the Season of the Witch Oracle deck series, we hone in on one guiding light, our North Star, to represent the energy of each Sabbat. Imbolc is associated with patience, hope, transitions, and beginning the ascent back to the light after the darkness of the winter months, among other things. But in our hearts, we felt like this is the perfect season to represent the South. It's a time when the harshness of a spiritually dark cycle may bring up feelings of vulnerability or confusion about your next steps, or when you need some encouragement to keep going. We also have found this Sabbat to be the most suited for solitary spiritual work, a time when you turn inward and focus on your hopes and dreams. Each card was brought to light with the hope that it would stimulate self-awareness rather than focusing on other people. Of course, you can use this deck to find answers related to those in your orbit, but ultimately, this deck is for those of you who are ready to do your own spiritual work in a deeply nourishing way. We say embrace the energy of being self-centered, not in a self-absorbed way, but as a reminder that the common thread for all things in your life is you, and that the only thing you truly have control over and ownership of is your energy. Your well-being is critical for developing healthy relationships to everything else that exists in your life, so we have created this deck with you in mind as a portal to finding the answers needed to be authentic, to seek self-care and to encourage you to take care of your most valuable possession, yourself. If you have this deck within your hands, trust that you are meant to begin the beautiful practice of the self. We are so honoured to have created a tool that will contribute to your journey of fulfillment and self-love. With gratitude, Lorraine and Juliet. The Season of the Witch Imbolc Oracle is by Lorraine and Juliet Diaz, illustrated by Tiziana Lukovic. It's a Rockpool publication, and we have just the information on the sides. And this is the incense card from the deck. Now, it's a nice rigid box, and there's a simple moon design on the inside. You get your book, which is a good size book, and this is typical for all of the Season of the Witch decks. And 44 cards, which again is typical for Season of the Witch. I believe they all have 44 cards. And this one has a blue gilded edge. They all actually come with a different colour around the edge, which I think is a really nice touch. These cards are a standard Oracle card side, and I'd actually forgotten how shiny these cards are. I don't know if you can see the reflection there, which is actually not a problem. Some cards that I have that are shiny are quite tricky to shuffle, but these work really well for hand over hand shuffling. I suspect they are fine for riffle shuffling. For those of you that have seen my videos before, you know that I don't tend to do riffle shuffling, but this is a good sized book, and you get a lot, which is packed with a lot of information, so quite a big contents here for all of the cards. And then we start off with an introduction about the themes and influences of this deck, some keywords for you to focus on, how to use the cards, and it talks about a repeating element. So something that the creators of the Season of the Witch deck have done is to have a repeating element, and in this deck it is candle lights and a wintry theme. The idea being that the candlelight symbolises the return of the light after the dark winter months. There's some other suggestions of how you might want to use it. The creators have always said that these decks don't have to be used with the Sabbat that they are assigned to. And so we have daily reflections, and then they have quite a lot of spreads in here. And one thing that they include in every single book is the interviewer deck spread. Now, I didn't always do this, but this is something that I've started to incorporate into my practice. So some questions for you to ask, and depending on which card you pull, you get an insight as to the nature and personality of the deck and how the deck can help you grow and when's the best time to work with it. So if, like me, you have rather a lot of decks in your collection and you're not sure which one to go for, you can do this to see which one might help you with a particular question, which I really love. Once I've done a deck interview, I'm creating this spreadsheet, if you like, at the back of my tarot journal. So I've got a quick reference to remind myself of what these decks can offer me. I think once I've done a few more, when I filled this in, I am thinking of simplifying this a little bit more and just having a one word for each of the questions. And if you're interested, the questions are: what is your personality? What is your strength? What is your weakness? How will you help me grow? Best time to use you for guidance, best way to work with you, and what will our relationship be like? And it's interesting because all of them do come up with very different answers, so I would definitely recommend giving this spread a go. Other spread ideas include a variation on the Celtic cross here, and then various other spreads which have been inspired by the theme of this deck. So as I said, quite a few spreads for you to try out. And then we go straight into the cards. Something I love about Rockpool publications and the books that they produce to accompany their decks is that they all seem to be colour. I've yet to have a Rockpool deck that hasn't got a colour book, and the size of the picture is a really good size, so you can see just as much detail as you can on the card. This is not the same card, but yeah, so it's big enough to be able to look at all the details. And something else I love about Rockpool books is that you get this kind of background bleed, so where an image has been, they've reduced the opacity on it just to give this theme throughout the book, and then these beautiful decorative borders around each page. So what you get on each card is a little bit of writing, which is also reflected in the book here, written in italics, but then you also get some keywords for the energy of that card as well, and you get a really in-depth description, sometimes a page, sometimes a little bit more. And also in the Season of the Witch decks, is in addition to your keywords and your little written summary and your description, they sometimes give you a spell that you can work with, or sometimes a little bit more information. So for the incense card here, they've given you some additional information about some incense and their connections to elements, celestial bodies and magic properties. So if you're into spell casting and you're just getting into thinking about working with spells, then you might want to consider adding any Season of the Witch deck to your collection. Now, I find something very calming about this deck, and I think it's probably to do with the visuals and the artwork by Tiziana Lukovic. And for me, it has this real dreamlike and ethereal quality to it. And that's probably because it's dealing with themes to do with sort of slumber and reawakening after the dark periods of winter, and the idea of the sun and the light is, we know it's going to be returning, and so we're in this sort of liminal space, that sort of in-between stage of it's still dark but we know the light is on the way. And Tiziana has created this through her use of these sort of pastel-y blues and pastel-y yellows, which all add to this kind of dreamlike world that she's created. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of repeated imagery throughout this deck. So the first being candles. Now, if you didn't pick up upon this during the flip through, go back and watch the flip through and you'll notice that there is a candle in each card. I just love this little one with the mouse here. And so this is a running theme throughout the deck, but there's also other details which run throughout this deck. One of my personal favourites is the little fox, or big fox should we say. There's quite a few butterflies or moths in this deck as well. Here we've got a sleepy fox. And there's also a lot of crescents and full moons in this deck as well. Which continues in my pile, which I've assigned as snowy landscapes. So there's our fox again. And because of the inclusion of this snowy landscape, to me it really does feel like that calm before the storm. And by storm I mean not really a storm, but that sort of calm before we reawake when the light comes again. And for me, it just makes this deck seem extra magical. And so, yes, this pile is kind of that sleepy pile, that time where we're sort of half asleep, half awake, sort of dreaming, sort of aware, that kind of magical space where we're connecting to our spiritual selves. And I think certainly this pile, that really sums that up for me. I just love this one here, this idea of sort of being gripped by sleep, but knowing that you need to awake at some time. And so these muted pastel-y colours also help to give that sort of soft focus of light, soft focus of energy when we've been in this restful period during winter. We're not at full energy, so gently easing us into the spring and the forthcoming light. Now, last year I just did a single card pull and wrote them into my legend planner. However, this year I'm planning on using this deck a little bit differently. My plan is to work in my visual journal, where instead of just writing information down, I'm going to create images and write any words or sentences that come to me. I haven't worked in this as much as I'd hoped since sharing this a couple of weeks ago with you in my year ahead spread, but what I would really like to do is to use the Imbolc Oracle to work with this. And if you remember, for the quarter or the season of winter, I pulled the star card from the Season of the Witch Yule deck, so I kind of want to work with these together until at least the end of February. So using the cards from this deck to keep me on track in order to continue to follow the star that guides me. However, I am quite tempted to use some of the suggested spreads in this booklet, in particular this Coming of Spring spread, which has caught my attention. So that's all about identifying transitions and current energies, and I always find an energy spread quite useful to sort of know what subtle energies are at play, particularly if things aren't going to plan or feeling a little bit stagnant. I think sometimes using a spread that looks at energies can be really insightful. So in summary, this deck is a really calming deck, and I think that's because the creators set the intention for this deck to help people go in a little bit to focus on self-love, self-care, and to use this time for spiritual growth and to re-establish a spiritual practice. And some of us are really good at doing that all the time, and some of us maybe get waylaid, and they have said that Imbolc is a great time to reconnect with your spirituality. And so the artwork does a great job at reinforcing that idea. It's very dreamlike, it's very almost mysterious, and it takes you into that liminal space between our spiritual selves and our physical world. And so to speak to your spiritual side, there's a lot of symbols in there, like moons and kind of guiding stars. Obviously that there's that repetition of the candle to remind us that the dark times are coming to an end and light is going to fill our lives once more, which gives us a lot of hope. And if you think about the star card in tarot, it's a similar kind of idea. So we're over the worst of it, and more positive times, more light-hearted times are ahead of us. They have also reminded us that when you are self-centered, and that's the word that they've used in their book, that's not about being self-absorbed. It's about making sure that you are checking in with yourself, that you are actually looking after yourself, because after all, when we look after ourselves, we're in a much better position to look after other people, look after the planet, and really be of service and to help other people navigate situations that maybe they're struggling with, because you're already in a stronger, more healthy, positive mindset. And if you're at all in two minds about whether to get a Season of the Witch Oracle deck, I think they're totally worth it. I really love the messages and ideas that come out of this deck. It does feel like a very spiritual journey that it takes you on, and personally for me, I said it's my favourite deck, and I think if you're interested, try this one first and see how you get on with it. And the reason I think that this is a really nice one to start with is because of this gentle and calm quality that runs throughout the deck. But what do you think? What has your experience of using this deck been like? Or perhaps you weren't sure if you wanted this deck, and now you've had a chance to look through it, maybe it's changed your mind. Do comment below. Thank you so much for joining me today to take a look at the Imbolc Oracle, my favourite edition of the Season of the Witch Oracle collection. I do hope you found that review useful today. If you did, I'd love it if you popped a comment below, liked the video, and if you enjoy looking at tarot and oracle deck reviews, looking at the artwork, looking at the meanings, then please consider subscribing to my channel. It really does mean a lot. I'm Sally, and this is my channel, Vaudeville Manor, House of Art and Tarot, and until the next time, here are some other videos that you might like to watch. Bye bye.